really bad news coming out of North Korea, and I am worried. And I mean, I've talked about this. If you followed my work in North Korea, if you haven't, this is a point I make, and I feel the need I have to make it every so often because everyone forgets. North Korea does this cyclical thing where they do this hawk and dove thing where one period we want peace, let's negotiate, let's work together, and then they flip the switch and they're like, we're going to destroy the world, saber rattling, blah 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 blah. This is a strategy they use it very effectively. They must have a chart where they figure out the exact memory of the average person, because they have a time to a T where every time they do this, people forget they just did this before, and they're like, oh my God, this never happened before. It's like they did this exactly 8.7 months ago, and they're going to do it again in another 17.4 months. So I still don't like it when this happens for obvious reasons. So today, North Korean authorities demolished an inter-Korean liaison office in the border city of Kaesong. Kaesong was supposed to be this trial balloon where North Korea and South Korea work together. They have this area, it's on North Korean territory, where North Koreans work for South Korean companies, and it was very, 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 very small trial balloon to look toward reunification would look like. And there were all sorts of problems there because you're working for South Koreans, but you don't want to access South Korean information, and they're getting taxed at huge rates, but they're still making good money. And then it's like, wait a minute, if we're making good money working for South Korean companies, doesn't that mean South Korea is better than us? It was really this weird no man's land. So the demolition took place around the afternoon in Korean time, and this is amid heightened tensions between the Koreas over the past week, prompted in part by North Korean anger over the South's failure to stop activists from sending leaflets into the North. North Korean state media reports that the office had been destroyed in a, quote, terrific explosion. The relevant field of the DPRK put into practice the measure of completely destroying the North-South Joint Liaison Office in the Kaesong Industrial Zone. This is according to the North Korean news agency. The move had come in response to widespread public anger over anti-regime leaflets sent by defectors in the South. This is what the North is saying. And it's just funny how they're like, oh yeah, I said this before. Like, oh, it's the people that are upset. They're so angry they're getting information. Yeah. And they're saying this is in accordance with the, quote, mindset of the enraged people to surely force human scum and those who have sheltered the scum to pay dearly for their crimes. South Korea said its defense minister and the chief of the military joint chiefs of staff have been briefed on the situation and had committed to a combat control office to manage what's going on. So they're escalating, getting ready for this, okay? Seoul also convened an emergency meeting of the Presidential National Security Council later in the day, with officials reportedly expressing strong regret at the move. They said, quote, the North destroying the liaison office is an act that goes against the expectations of those who wish for the development of North-South relations and the settlement of peace on the Korean peninsula. This is a statement released by the Blue House, which is where the South Korean president lives. The government makes it clear that the responsibility for everything that follows this is entirely on the North side. We will strongly respond if the North continues to take measures that exacerbate the situation. In defense of the North, if you live in a country like North Korea, where the government controls pretty much everything, you can understand how they would argue, and the people in the North would believe, that if this is being done, it's being done with the approval of the South Korean government. It's like, well, couldn't pull that crap up here. The government put a stop to it, so clearly they're happy this is happening. Seoul's Ministry of National Defense warned that the Republic of Korea will respond strongly should the North carry out any military provocation, and adds that it's been closely monitoring the North's military movements around the clock. This is, by the way, this is clearly a result in part of the power vacuum that has been left by President Trump effectively giving up on finding a solution to the North Korean situation. And the North, whenever they sense weakness, or they sense someone's not giving them the attention that they want and need, they are going to make sure you give them the attention and money, whatever it is that they need. They could try it the nice way, or they do it this way. They don't care. All they care about is getting what they want accomplished. So the South Korean head of the liaison office held a briefing Tuesday evening in Korea, which obviously they're ahead of us, voicing strong regret and complaint against the senseless act of detonating the building. The North's destruction of the office, quote, has astounded not only our people, but the whole world, and says that Pyongyang will have to take due responsibility for such action. They did. I love responsibility is one of these words that is used and makes no sense. North Korea said, we blew up this building. We are responsible. Well, they're going to have to take responsibility. They did. If they think they mean that North Korea is going to have to pay reparations for blowing up a building that South Korea had some property interest in, it's not going to happen. It'll never happen. And it's never going to happen. So this follows comments by Kim Yo-jong on Saturday, which we covered yesterday, warning that the Inter-Korean Liaison Office would soon be collapsed. And there's a growing domestic propaganda campaign that accompanied these warnings. The Rodong Simon, which is their newspaper, yesterday carried a number of statements purportedly made by estranged citizens, keen to mete out revenge against Southern enemies. I love that in North Korean newspapers, it'll be all about Kim Jong-un, Kim Jong-un, Kim Jong-un, and they'll be like, local jackass from Pyongyang says, I'm enraged and we must strike forth these enemies. It's cool. The newspaper also quoted local miners, MINER, not children, as saying they were ready to help blow up the office, which had opened in 2018. South Korea's government was in 2018 reported to have spent a total of $8.6 million on the refurbishment of the joint facility, which had originally been intended to facilitate dialogue between the two Koreas. No South Koreans were working at the office at the time of demolition, which had been closed on January 13th amid fears about COVID-19. And one expert said that the move served as part of North Korea's efforts to punish South Korea's government for what it saw as broken promises and warns that escalation may be likely in the future. As he put it, Andrei Lankov, he's the best. He's absolutely beyond a doubt the best. He said the North Koreans have decided to teach the Moon administration a lesson to show them it's not the Americans that can cause them a headache. The Moon administration should have understood that they are not dealing with fellow nationalist idealists, but the smartest brand of hyperrealists in operation. North Korea needs money. They expected economic and financial aid, exactly what the South Koreans have avoided giving to them. While unsure about whether the DPRK would go so far to shell areas in the South or even move to assassinate high-profile defectors, Andrei Lankov said Pyongyang may move to destroy other South Korean property in the north. The sounds of explosion may also be heard from the Mount Kumgang tourist zone. That's absolutely true. And North Korea's military also announced it would soon advance troops into previously demilitarized areas. How North Korea works, very intelligently, is we are going to keep escalating until you give us a reason not to. The reason could be force, or it could be bribes. But it's going to be one or the other. We're going to get our way because we do not care about anybody else. So they're not crazy. They're not stupid. But this is not good news, especially because, as I've said many, many times, when you're hearing about news about North Korea, the only question is, what does this mean about the peaceful liberation of the North Korean people who are slaves in this country? And this, I guess in a sense, this could be good news for them in that it's showing that the regime is a little weak and is freaking out about not having cash, but I still don't like this.